How about Jenna? John suggested instead. I was instantly tongue-tied. Jenna? Yeah, Jenna. As in, thanks for the blowjob, Jenna. I hadn't told John about my girlfriend, mainly because I'd known he would disapprove. It was weird, man, but I felt like I was that special agent's snot-nosed kid, and I didn't want to let him down. How do you know about her? I said sheepishly. John pointed to the recording device. Do us both a favor and turn that thing off when you're done for the day, okay? I couldn't help the shit grin on his face, but my handler wasn't amused. So, who is she? Just some chick who's been living with me. Is it serious? She's got a kid. I'd say that's serious. John's shoulders slumped and he turned away, shaking his head. Christ, George. Don't worry about it, man. It's cool. Listen to me, John responded with a touch of anger. Women are dangerous for someone like you. Women can get a CI killed. Didn't I explain about Hammer? Yeah, you told me, but dude, the girl is living with you. I haven't told her about what I'm doing, and I don't plan to. Yeah, that's what Hammer said. Get rid of her, George. Nothing good can come of this. You need to get rid of the girl. I wasn't in the mood for a lecture from Dad, so I climbed out of the car. Hold on a second, said John before I could close the door. He paused a moment before continuing. Look, you're a grown man, but I have to tell you, George, and this is coming from years of experience, a relationship while undercover is a really, really bad idea. I got it, I said tersely and slammed the door. As I headed for my truck, I heard the window rolling behind me, followed by John's mocking voice. Suck it, baby. Oh, baby, suck my cock. I flipped the middle finger over my shoulder and climbed into the pickup. Then Joe and I drove off toward the farmhouse. So, what should I do? Asked Joe as we headed to the dirt driveway. Don't do anything, just stay in the truck. If there's trouble, honk the horn. Does it work? Yes, it works. We pulled up to the farmhouse and I crossed onto the porch and knocked at the front door. The carpenter answered, looking ragged like he had slept in a week. As we were about to head inside, he spotted Joe sitting in the pickup. The man stepped out on the porch for a better look. Who's that in the truck? A friend of mine, he's cool. The carpenter considered Joe a long moment, then turned to me. I'm not sure we're going to do this, he said. At least not today. This wouldn't have been the first time a seller got cold feet, and certainly not the last. Might not have the cash tomorrow, I warned him, waving the envelope. The carpenter said nothing. I stood on the porch a few seconds longer, then started back down the stairs. Okay, give me a shout if you change your mind, I told him. When I was halfway to the truck, he called, Hey, come on back, and waved me into the house. The rifles and handguns were arranged across the kitchen table. I checked each one to make sure they weren't loaded. Got something I can wrap these in, I asked. The carpenter disappeared, and I took the opportunity to light a cigarette and look around. The house was quiet and appeared empty. All those tweakers had either cleared out or passed out, but the place still looked and smelled like a pigsty. The carpenter re-entered the kitchen carrying some old bath towels. Man, I appreciate this, I told him as I rolled the rifles up. When you got a felony like I do, you can't buy these in a fucking store. What are you gonna do with them? Asked the carpenter. Flip them and make a little profit, I answered. That's what I do. So if you got more, just let me know, man. Anything you've got, I'll take. Anything you've got, I'll be glad to take it off your hands. I pulled the envelope and started counting out the money on the table. 100, 200, 300. Every bill I counted was going on the record, and it was all adding up to a big fat bust. The instant I stepped on the porch, I heard the ATF helicopter buzzing high overhead. Halfway to the truck, the carpenter checked his step and squinted into the bright noonday sky. What's that I'm hearing? I followed his gaze. You couldn't see the chopper up there? Must have been at a pretty high altitude, but the sound of its rotor was unmistakable. You hearing that? He asked me. What was I going to do? Deny it? Yeah, I could hear it. Could be a water pump, or maybe somebody's got a generator running in one of those farms around here. Yeah, I hear it. Could be a water pump, or maybe someone's got a generator running at one of the farms around here. We dumped the rifles into the bed, shook hands, and Joe and I drove away. I would return 3 times to that farmhouse to buy weapons, and each time that carpenter pounded another nail into his own coffin. When I got back from Winchester, I dropped by Shooter's Food and Beer to have a few beers. By this time, Shooter had figured out that Big Roy was never going to let him join the Hemet Boggles, so he'd signed on with the Green Machine, the support club run by Sergeant Crusher, the crooked Cathedral City cop. I was feeling sorry for myself that afternoon, which might explain why a few beers turned into a few drinks, which led to a fucking fiasco. Almost 7 months into my time undercover, I was starting to realize John Carr had been right all along. There would be no quick solution to Hemet's gang problem. Any illusions I had about cleaning up my hometown were vanishing with each month that dropped off the calendar. Yes, I was making the occasional gun buy, but Operation 22 Green was slogging along as if though waist deep in mud. Not to mention, I was still a friggin' prospect, still stuck in that no man's land where I couldn't fight back, couldn't sit in on church meetings, couldn't gather the inside evidence I needed to get from under the mission that was dragging my ass down. Some kind of spark was needed to get 22 Green's engine cranking, and before long, I was convinced it was my responsibility, and mine alone, to make that happen. For this, I blame the whiskey. There was a time in my early days undercover when I was drinking a whole lot of that rock gut, and once I started on Kentucky bourbon, I was going to finish Kentucky bourbon. I'd take a fifth of wild turkey and turn it right up, and still it wasn't enough. Once I got to where I was going though, old George didn't give a shit about nothing. Things were even worse with tequila. 2 shots of that devil water, and I was looking to fight anyone, including my best friends. Nobody wanted me drinking tequila. A few beers led to lots of bourbon, and before I knew it, the bar was crowded. A lousy band was rocking the joint, and Crash and his wife had joined me for drinks. As I sat knocking back wild turkey and trying to ignore bad rock and roll, an insane plan began to form in my booze-addled brain. I got an idea, I yelled to Crasher over the din. Let's go to Elsinore, I said. What the fuck for? I lifted my glass and said, the sons of hell. This didn't register with Crash right away. That Vogel was more fucked up than I was, but in a moment, the light bulb came on and a slow smile crept over his face. I hear you, brother. The Sons of Hell was the support club for the Hells Angels, much like the Green Machine ran support for the Vogels. Because of their association with the hated Angels, there had always been friction between the Sons of Hell and Green Nation, but the sparks had never been quite hot enough to achieve ignition and lift up. I figured if I could get those outlaws in Elsinore pissed off enough, they might retaliate. And if they retaliated, there was a damn good chance the Hells Angels would get involved. And if the Angels jumped into the fight, we just might be looking at a good old-fashioned gang war. And with the gang war, you got criminal conspiracy. And with criminal conspiracy, you got RICO. Man, if I could give the ATF grounds for a RICO charge, I could get out from under Operation 22 Green and die a happy man. My plan to make all the above happen was masterful in its cunning simplicity. Crash and I would drive over to Son's favorite hangout, Lake Elsinore, a biker bar called The Hideaway, and we'd stir up a little chaos. This half-baked scheme, cooked up on wild turkey and executed by a couple of drunken assholes, was doomed to fail. But at the time, with a glass of Kentucky bourbon in my hand, I thought it was a fucking genius. This was shock and awe, baby, and the Joint Chiefs had nothing on me. The Hideaway bar in Lake Elsinore had everything an outlaw biker could possibly want. There was a pool table, a jukebox with good old-fashioned rock and roll tunes, an accommodating bartender willing to pour more shots of whiskey, and walls papered with customers' dollar bills, like you'd find at the Screaming Chicken Saloon or the Crossroads in Yacuipa. The only thing that biker bar didn't have was goddamn bikers. Not a single one of those Sons of Hell was anywhere to be found. I had to settle for tying a green bandana to a chain over the pool table, just to let those boys know we'd been there. Then Crash and I stumbled back out the door. Nothing had come of our bold probe behind enemy lines. There would be no biker war to end all biker wars. The Sons of Hell had tucked themselves in for the night, and all I had to show for my unrecognized genius was a splitting migraine. On the drive back to Hemet, our cell phones started blowing up with calls from Big Roy. Seems word had leaked that a couple of shit-faced Vogel prospects were cruising Lake Elsinore looking for trouble. We didn't answer those calls. But when we returned to our homes, Big Todd was sitting outside my front door and North was waiting on Crash. We were both still, half cocked, when our asses got dragged over to Big Roy's place in San Jacinto for a Remy. Who the fuck told you two clowns you could fuck with the sons of hell? I'm the P here. I say who goes where. You don't make a fucking move without my say-so, understand? He turned to Crash and shoved his chest. Understand, motherfucker? Yeah, I understand, Crash answered dutifully, but with little sincerity. Now I spoke up. It's my fault, Roy. Going to Elsinore was my idea. Your idea, sputtered Big Roy, beat-faced. Are you trying to make me look bad, asshole? Hope not, I replied. Now Roy shoved my chest too. Well, you are. This shit makes me look bad. Like I don't have control over my fucking chapter. As Hammett's P, Big Roy was responsible for the behavior of his mutts, and yours truly had just slipped his leash and bit the mailman. To make matters worse, Roy had recently bought himself a new Harley Sportster and was worried Terry the Tramp might confiscate it. Not an uncommon punishment among the 1%er clubs. Roy was pacing now, trying to contain the anger and keep his head from exploding. He stopped and stabbed a finger at two of us. You assholes fuck up one more time and you're out. I'll run you both down the road. You got that? I bit my tongue and said nothing. Oh, happy day when I get paid. That bastard to visit and lock up. Oh, happy fucking day. It was late when I got back to the chicken coop and slipped into the bedroom. As I pushed through the beads, I almost tripped over Jenna. Sadly enough, buck naked and passed out on the floor was not an uncommon position for my girlfriend. Neither was the excuse she usually gave for it, boredom. Chief Thompson always said boredom was his daughter's worst enemy, and I think Daddy was spot on. So after she gobbled up all the pain meds in my medicine cabinet and lost contact with the prostitute who'd supplied speed and heroin, Jenna had hooked up with one of her old tweaker pals and started driving down to Tijuana, Mexico for bottles of Soma, which are powerful muscle relaxants. She could be across the border and home again in 2.5 hours and fucked up in 3. And I couldn't stay ahead of her, man. Fast as I flushed those pills, the girl would be on her way back to Tijuana to buy more. Might not have been so bad if Jenna had known how to swallow 1 or 2 Somas. Unfortunately, that was never my girlfriend's style. In true fashion, she'd pop a handful and end up flat on her back, drooling and vacant-eyed. Man, I hated that look. When you're trying to talk to someone and they're not even there. Old Joe and I would pick her nasty ass off the floor and pour it into the bed, where she'd either puke between the sheets or shit in them. That was the condition I found Jenna in when I came home from Big Roy's that night, fucked up on Somas and spread eagled on the bedroom floor. I lifted her naked body onto the bed, then crawled in beside her. A few hours later, I awoke to the mattress shaking, not uncommon with an addict like her. Usually, when I got tired of the trembling, I'd grab my pillow and sleep on the floor or boot her ass out of bed. But something different was happening this time. Jenna's body was twitching as though being poked by the cattle prod, and her breathing was ragged. When I tried shaking her awake, there was no response. Her head just flopped around like a rag doll's. Fuck, the bitch is dying on me. I cradled her in my arms and rushed her to the shower, running the cold water full blast on her as I held her body against mine. When someone is that loaded, it takes hours to bring them back. But eventually Jenna came around and I had myself a shivering, wide awake, fucked up person. It happened often enough that I started leaving her in the shower with the cold water running and went back to bed. I never knew if I'd wake up in the morning and find Jenna drowned. As heartless as it sounds, there were times when I had my fingers crossed. I hoped and prayed that girl would die. I just couldn't take living like that anymore, but it never happened. The crazy bitch always survived.